can relate quite a bit to you on many levels, not just as a filmmaker, but as someone who struggled with painting and comes out of a long history of struggle and a family, not just my family, but the whole archipelago of the Philippines through many forms of colonialism. And well, firstly, I wanted to commend you for making such an extraordinary film where you were able to, as you said, create something that was very seamless. And I really appreciated hearing you really wonderfully articulate your creative process and how it's not separated from your intellectual or personal processes of thinking. So I wanted to thank you for that. And I was curious from your own opinion whether or not you thought the atrocities that were committed by the Japanese in Malaysia in any way was related to being a colony of Britain. And I ask this question because I believe, and I'm not alone in this, that in the Philippines, the atrocities that were committed, which were also incredibly horrific, in part were committed because the United States was the colonizer of the Philippines. And I think that the Japanese created or wreaked havoc in certain ways as a consequence. So I was curious what your thoughts were in terms of Malaysia.
Yeah. Yes, definitely, because Malaysia at that point was a colonial state. And in a strange way, the Japanese came, just as they came to many parts of Southeast Asia, including Philippines, as liberators. So the propaganda was, we are here to liberate you from the real colonizers, who were the British or the French or the Dutch. But only certain sectors of the indigenous population were so-called liberated. For example, in Southeast Asia, the Japanese at that point came to liberate the indigenous communities, so including Malays, the Indians who were also colonized in India, and other groups of people like Filipinos. But those who had particularly Chinese blood because of their own histories and history with China, took on the brunt of the terror and the brunt of the oppression. And majority of Chinese were the ones detained, killed, oppressed during the Japanese occupation in Malaya. So it's a very sensitive part of history, because even now we negotiate through this period in history with racial overtones. That certain people were privileged, certain people were used as informers, certain people conspired or were complicit with the Japanese at that point in time. So it was both about colonialism and it was about liberation. And I just want to emphasize that, moments like that in history, there is, in my own opinion, there's very much not about right or wrong, as I mentioned in the talk. It's about indiscrimination. It's who you meet, who is nice to you. So, for example, why did the protagonist get released? That's always the question that bothers me. And at no point was any historian or my father himself able to answer this question. Why was he released? Is it through empathy because he was a young kid? Was it because he was useful? And the Japanese, wanted to use him as a kid to spread fear among the other, prisoners. So yes, I hope I answered your question.